As we promised before this break, here's an occasion to speak about India's great tribal leaders, whose names should be as familiar to us as many in both the modern and historical context have been. Today, ladies and gentlemen, is the day where the Prime Minister has launched a special scheme of 24,000 crore rupees to target basic development for tribal areas, especially with 75 ultra-backward tribals. It's been done on what is the 148th birth anniversary, because on this day, on the 15th of November 1875, was born Birsa Munda in the village of Ulihatu in the Khunti district of Jharkhand. He first became the head of the village at the young age of 22 and then founded the Munda Anushilan Samiti in 1895. This was to organize the Munda people against British colonial rule. He led the Munda rebellion in 1899, which was a major uprising against the British in the region. He was captured by the British in 1900 and sentenced to life imprisonment. He died in prison in 1905 at the very young age of 30. He became a symbol of resistance and freedom for the Munda people to this day. His legacy continues to inspire generations to fight for their rights and their identity. In 1986, the Indian government issued a postage stamp in his honor. The Birsa Munda Memorial College in Khunti was later named after him. That, ladies and gentlemen, is Birsa Munda. I'm going to come back and discuss this bit by bit. Dr. Sucheta Sen Chaudhary is joining us on the broadcast. She's head of Department of Anthropology and Tribal Studies and Dean School for the Study of Culture. And Dushyant Dangi, founder of Tribal Art India, is joining us on the broadcast as well. I will be asking Dushyant what these tribal heroes mean to him. But first, Dr. Chaudhary, if you can hear me, ma'am, can you tell us a bit about Birsa Munda for people watching this broadcast who might have heard the name but don't really know the life history of the man?
Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are.
So, Birsa is usually referred as Dharti Aba, the father of the earth, and Bhagavan Birsa Munda by people of the state of Jharkhand, basically the tribal people. And when we look at that personality, he was a freedom fighter of before, that means 19th century of India. He was a Munda by birth, but by his contribution, he became a national hero. And he is as important as anybody who contributed for our freedom struggle. Most importantly, when we look at the issue and agenda Birsa Munda worked and addressed, we see that still it remained very relevant in this 21st century. When we are approaching a new millennium, we are suffering from climate change and other issues. And in post-colonial situation also, what Birsa Munda said in addition to the Jangal, Jal, Jameen issues, it still remained relevant. So it starts from the freedom struggle for independence, and it is still very relevant. So in short, I said it, and he was a person who born in 1975, and his life he lived only 25 years maximum, yes. 24 or 25 years. So that hero.
So what was it that we understand of British policy on the tribals that he chose to agitate and start his revolt in 1899?
Look, when Birsa Munda started his movement, it was not he was the person who started. Before him also there were some stages. If we look at the struggle of the tribal people in that whole century, we see that sometimes from the beginning of the century, people are struggling against that kind of aggression happened in the lands and their own areas by the people, mostly under the leadership of the British colonial ruler. It is already a known story. So if you ask me particularly 1989 is not the issue. The issue is that Birsa Munda's movement, before Birsa Munda's movement that happened 1957, 1956 also, the Santal rebellion, before that whole rebellion of 1830, ultimately when culminated to Birsa Munda's movement, the success story is the CNT Act. And later we saw the SNT Act also, that Britishers compelled to create the CNT Act. That was maybe a kind of immediate outcome of Birsa Munda's movement.
Okay, so for people watching the broadcast, the British chose to impose taxation on the tribal peoples of India, and through their system of Jagirdari, thereby converted them into farm laborers, took away their rights for their traditional ancestral lands, handed them over to Jagirdars, and turned them into peasant farmers. Then they abused the taxation system, and this was what Birsa Munda stood up against. He rallied the people, not only Mundas, but people from large areas, from Jharkhand, from Odisha, from Bihar, West Bengal, MP, many people. And as ma'am has already told us, he is known as Dharti Baba, the Baba of the earth. And he told them, don't pay your taxes to the British, don't pay your rent to these landlords. This is your soil. These are your lands. These are your forests. You don't have to give them a commission. He stood up against the creation of Christian missionary schools because he felt that they would erode the tribal culture. So he became one of India's most revered tribal leaders. That, ladies and gentlemen, was Birsa Munda. Let me quickly get in a thought from a Dushyant Dangi. Dushyantji, here we are, a century and a half later. And when you hear the story of a Birsa Munda fighting for tribal rights in Jharkhand in the year 1900, well before our grandfathers and grandmothers were born, what does he mean to you or a person like you today?
I think we are still living in that era only because still the issues of tribals are somewhere surrounding that only, that Jal, Jameen and Jungle. And the biggest issue which today also we need to address about tribal is the displacements of tribals which we are causing on the name of development. Most of the tribals live, especially in my Madhya Pradesh, most of the tribals are living near the Narmada Valley, and it's full of minerals and natural resources, and that's why a lot of displacement has happened. And I still think that the government is doing the same with these peoples, and I'm very happy that at last government is looking at this, but there are looking at this, they are spending budgets on it, but there are very, very complex issues
Yes,
which involve their culture, where
okay,
they
so
are
Dushyant,
their own ecosystem.
so Dushyant, let me understand this from you, and it's a very pivotal question because the entire structure on tribal communities constitutionally in India has been built that look, preservation has to be done of cultural identity, language, traditions. Then there is the issue of development. Now, what is the priority? Does a young tribal, a person such as yourself who works with a lot of young tribals, okay, and is trying to empower them by making them entrepreneurs about tribal art, is it possible to do development and keep identity? Do young tribals do they want a house, they want a car, they want a better education, they want to be well traveled, or are they basically concerned with forest rights and other issues?
They are concerned about the forest rights also, and they want the facilities also. The development you are providing them does not define the development they want. I will like to quote Mahatma Gandhi here. He used to say that we are a country of mass people and we should be going in a production by masses, not mass production. And that is relevant today also for the tribals also. Most of the development we are focusing, especially in tribal areas, does not even involve them. They are moving to cities to get those facilities. I think the development should reach them. They
Yes.
should not reach to the development, and that's the issue. And obviously, if our development should be defined according to their needs also. It's very sorry to say that still development is defined by the definitions for
No,
our
no.
urban
What
cultures.
is sorry to say is that 150 years later, we're still a bit confused about this. We don't know
Yeah,
whether
definitely.
we should leave the tribals alone, and alone therefore means not providing any development, okay,
No, we are
or
not saying that. We
provide the
are
development but be sympathetic in terms of preserving
be
culture.
sympathetic, and there should be a middle way. There
Yeah,
should be a
we
middle
need to
ground
figure it
where,
out, which requires a lot more
yeah.
complex conversations. Okay, but I don't leave it only at Birsa Munda. I want to take on a few others, several of whom have been mentioned by the Prime Minister in his speech today, so it gives us an opportunity to talk about their histories. Let's talk about Rani Gaidinlu. Born in 1867, she was born in Pungyar in Manipur. She joined the Hirim Naga movement in 1970 to fight against British colonial rule. She led the rebellion for 15 years. This was one of India's longest rebellions ever. She was captured by the British in 1932 and imprisoned for 16 years. Released from prison in 1947 after independence. She was conferred the title Rani by the Manipuri people for her leadership and her courage. She died just a few months after independence and became a symbol of resistance and freedom for the Manipuri people. And we understand, of course, in 1997 that the Indian government also issued a postage stamp in her order, and the context of Manipur has been a heated tribal conversation as it is. So let me get Dr. Chaudhary back into this conversation. Dr. Chaudhary, when we talk about a leader like Rani, what was she fighting for against the British?
Look, Rani Giri and her leader Jadonam, because Jadonam began that movement, what you are telling. Obviously, they also followed the same ideology what Birsa Munda followed. They wanted to maintain and create a kind of identity. Obviously, that was connected to their survival. And I think I like to differ with you when you tell that let them live their own life, let them be in the isolation, nothing like that. Only thing we are forgetting that they are also contributing to the India's independent movement. They are also equally contributing as any other communities. But when they are contributing, we are looking at them from a very different perspective, and that means they became a kind of not object of our studies, and we are telling these kind of sentences that whether we'll let them isolate them, so it is really confusing. Actually, there is no barrier because we are not admitting their contribution. Rani Guidelliu's movement created a kind of identity for very small groups of Naga people. Zeliangrong movement, it is usually. But the main important thing is that Zeliangrong movement and Rani's contribution, Zadonang, his leader, and her contribution created a larger platform to understand the whole issue. We are separating their contribution. So this is our problem.
It's a very serious problem
This is our problem.
because let's face it, to many people watching this telecast, this is the first time they're probably hearing of Rani. Okay, so let me touch upon. Finish your thought, ma'am.
Yeah, please. Here you see, for example, in case of Jharkhand today, it is really wonderful that our honorable Prime Minister has released some money, and basically for the development of farming activity, farmers activity of Jharkhand. So we must discuss what may be the highest beneficial situation for the people.
Yes.
I think that it is better to discuss today about the regulatory market for them.
Good
because
point. Good
staying
point.
here for some years,
Yeah, ma'am, we
First, I
just had the
see
economic
that
discussion just before I started this telecast. We will come back and have it. I promise you this. Okay, but let me just stay to the theme, because we wanted to spend a few minutes just talking about these tribal heroes, so they just get recorded in our imagination. It's mind space that we register dhire dhire, slowly, and then we remember them. So now we remember Birsa Munda. Let's remember Rani. Here's another name that's been taken. Aluri Sitarama Raju. She was a freedom fighter and revolutionary from Andhra Pradesh. Born in 1897 in Mogalu village, West Godavari district, he graduated from the Pitapuram Raja Government College with a degree in philosophy in 1922. He worked as a teacher for a few years, however, was soon drawn to the freedom movement and became involved in the struggle against British rule. In 1922, he joined the non-cooperation movement and organized protests and boycotts of British goods and institutions. In 24, Raju founded the Andhra Mahasabha, a political organization dedicated to the cause of Andhra Pradesh's independence. He also established the Andhra Kranti Sena, a volunteer army to fight against the British. He was also involved in several uprisings, including the Rampa Rebellion of 22, the Mopla Rebellion of 21. He was eventually captured in 24 and sentenced to transportation for life. He died in prison on the 7th of July, 1924, at the very young age of 27, considered a martyr by the people of Andhra and remembered for his courage, sacrifice, and dedication to the cause of the freedom of India. Ma'am, can you tell us a bit about Raju?
I won't be able. I'm very sorry.
Oh, fair enough.
I won't be able.
Fair enough. So let me
Yeah.
take the opportunity to take on Tilak Maji. Tilak Maji was born in 1825 in the village of Govindpur in Odisha. He belonged to the Paika caste, which was traditionally engaged in military service. He was a skilled archer and swordsman. He led a rebellion against the British East India Company in 1856 in protest against the imposition of taxes and the destruction of traditional tribal lands. He fought a guerrilla war against the British for over a year, carrying out raids in British camps and supply lines. He was captured by the British in 57 and sentenced to death. He was hanged in front of a large crowd in the same year and became a martyr for the Paika community and a symbol of resistance against British colonial rule. In 1961, the Indian government issued a postage stamp in his honor. Let's pick up one more name before we run out of time in this telecast. Ladies and gentlemen, Siddu Murmu, born in 1872 in the village of Murmatoli in the Khunti district of Jharkhand, Siddu Murmu was the first tribal freedom fighter from the Santhal community. He was born in 1872, as I mentioned, and was a strong advocate for the rights of tribal people. He played a key role in the struggle against British colonial rule and organized the Santhals against the British. He led several successful rebellions, including the participation in the Quit India movement of 1942, for which he spent many years in prison. He is considered a hero by the Santhal people as we speak today. So let's take a larger connotation from our two guests before we wind up. Dr. Chaudhary, now as you mentioned, and as I have also mentioned, for a lot of people watching this live television telecast, other than Birsa Munda, a lot of these names were probably being heard for the first time. Have we managed over the course of the last year or two, with President Murmu and the Prime Minister repeatedly taking up the cause of tribals, have we managed to gain a momentum to fix the errors of history and create a larger mind space in amongst all Indians about the contributions of India's tribals?
Yes, it's a very good question. And the first and foremost, I would like to tell you that if you follow all these movements and the objectives of these movements happen in the previous centuries, you will see that one thing is common, and that is related to the right of survival, obviously, which is now referred as Jal Jangal Jameen, that as a text. The common main thing is that the tribal living, the philosophy of living of tribal is very different. They have coexisted with all these natural elements and contributions, and they had their own customary practices. And those customary practices were so deep-rooted that when they found the new system, they could understand the threat probably they could understand the threat much before the other leaders, that what may be the future. And that's why they could speak very clearly. And that is a message, it must go to every Indian, that we have to take the philosophy of the tribal people on this issue. That is what we are talking of, natural environment, we can say cultural ecology, we can say cultural geography, whatever. The importance of it, they understood 200 years back. And that's why might be they were so, because we are just utilizing the nature as a kind of resource and over. And the tribal philosophy clearly teaching us that you have to take care of all things when you are utilizing it.
Okay.
I think that's
I think
idea is so strong.
Yeah, in these significant points, okay, I'll tell you just for people watching the broadcast, what has happened, and this happened during when President Murmu was sworn in as well, okay. We have a large news team, okay, I'm an editor of a news channel. We are here sitting and discussing tribal heroes, we're discussing tribal affairs, education schemes, nutrition schemes, which are the tribal areas, which are the districts, what are the populations. We are reaching out to have an authentic conversation to people such as those you've just heard. The question is, if we all play a small part, okay, you can bring about real change. So now let me leave the last word with Dushyant. Okay, so Dushyant, I'm going to take on a different tangent. Okay, so tell us about Tribal Art India. What is that you guys are doing?
Basically, there are a lot of artists living in Madhya Pradesh, especially Gonds and Bhils. And the Indian government is doing a lot of work with them, but still around 300 or 400 families live in slums of Bhopal and rest are living in forest. So basically what we do is we have made a platform for them from where they can sell their paintings or artworks, and 80% of it gets exported to US, UK and
okay. What is it a website? Do you have an Instagram page? How are you guys doing it?
It's a website called tribalartindia.com.
Okay.
And 85% of revenue goes to the artist directly, and mostly women tribal artists, because we are working on that aspects also. So the empowerment should be in the hands of the women of tribals, because men are a bit, there is an alcohol issue in Madhya Pradesh among the tribals. And so basically we are working with females, and around 300 families are associated with us, and all are underprivileged and living in slums and or in forest. Some are doing Manrega jobs, some are selling vegetables,
okay,
and some are
so Dushyant, how did you, I mean, so 300 families, how did you start this? Why did you feel the need to start it?
Basically during COVID, some of the artist family contacted us, and we got to know about their conditions, and we just posted it on our Facebook page, not even page, our personal Facebook account, and few of the social workers of India picked it up and they start helping us. Then some celebrities like Varun Grover, Suchita Dalal, and Ajit Premji's wife Yasmin Premji also picked it up, and they all contacted us and bought paintings. Even Varun was grateful enough to promote it on his Instagram and Twitter, and then it started growing, and then we needed a sustainable system through which these peoples can earn money easily. So we created this website, and I think it's more than two years.
Just think about it. Well. So next year when you're buying Diwali tokens, tribalartindia.com is probably a place to go. Very happy to hear that you're making sales. Very sad to hear that most of the sales are happening abroad. They should be happening right here in this country. So ladies and gentlemen, we can all do a little bit, because we need to bring about real change. Otherwise, it's just talking. And what the last thing, and I hate this about the media as well, we can't just be a talk shop. We have to be an action-oriented group of people. So Dushyant, thank you for the service that you're doing. Ma'am, it was a pleasure talking to you and being introduced to you during the course of this telecast. Thanks for your time. Glad we had a chance to discuss tribal heroes. Glad we've had a chance to discuss over the past 1 hour tribal affairs. And I promise you we'll keep it up.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.